In the quaint town of Willowbrook, nestled in the heart of upstate New York, lived a married couple named Shirley and Bruce Wilson. On the surface, their life appeared idyllic. A charming house with a white picket fence, blooming flowers in the front yard, and a friendly neighborhood. However, behind closed doors, their relationship was marred by unspoken tensions and an ever-growing distance. Shirley, with her striking auburn hair and piercing blue eyes, was a woman of undeniable beauty. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, pouring her creativity into her projects. Yet there was a heaviness in her heart that cast a shadow over her radiant smile. Bruce, a software engineer with a knack for fixing things, had an easygoing demeanour that often masked his struggles. One chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of Willowbrook, the couple found themselves at the centre of their living room, surrounded by the warmth of the crackling fireplace. Shirley fidgeted nervously with the hem of her sweater, her eyes avoiding Bruce's gaze. The room, though filled with the comforting glow of the fire, felt cold and distant.
"I don't understand why you can't trust me, Shirley," Bruce said, frustration lacing his voice. "We've been married for 2 years and you still keep so much inside. I want to be there for you, but it's like you build these walls around yourself."
Shirley sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's not about trusting you, Bruce. It's about protecting myself. I've been hurt before and I can't help but be cautious." Bruce ran a hand through his sandy hair, his brows furrowing.
"But we're supposed to be a team, Shirley. How can we be a team if you're always holding back? I want to understand, to help you, but you keep shutting me out."
Tension hung in the air as they both struggled to bridge the growing gap between them. Shirley's trust issues, deeply rooted in past wounds, had become a formidable barrier that Bruce couldn't seem to break through. "I just need some time," Shirley whispered, her voice barely audible. "I want to trust you, Bruce, but it's hard. I need to be sure." Bruce sighed, his frustration giving way to a sense of helplessness.
"Time isn't solving anything, Shirley. We need to talk and communicate. If we keep avoiding this, we'll drift further apart."
"But talking won't erase my past, Bruce. It won't magically make everything okay," Shirley replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Bruce took a step closer, reaching out to gently touch Shirley's arm.
"I'm not asking for magic, Shirley. I'm asking for openness and honesty. We can face whatever comes our way together, but I need you to let me in."
Shirley pulled away, retreating into the safety of her emotional fortress. "I can't just open up like that. It's not that simple." Bruce sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration.
"It's not simple because you make it complicated. You're not alone in this, Shirley. I'm here for you, but you must let me be."
Silence settled in the room, broken only by the crackling of the fire. The chasm between them seemed to widen with every passing moment. "I need some air," Shirley whispered, breaking the silence. She moved towards the front door, her steps heavy with the weight of unresolved issues.
"Shirley, wait!"
Bruce called out, but she was already slipping out into the chilly night, leaving him standing alone in the dimly lit living room. The door closed with a soft thud, echoing the hollowness that lingered in the space between them. Bruce sank onto the couch, running his hands through his hair once again. He couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter how hard he tried, he was losing the woman he loved. Outside, Shirley stood on the porch, staring into the starlit sky. Tears welled in her eyes as the cold wind bit into her skin. She felt torn between the desire to let Bruce in and the fear of being hurt again. The echoes of her past haunted her, making it difficult to see a future without the walls she had built. As the night deepened, the couple remained apart, one inside the house, wrestling with frustration and confusion, the other outside, grappling with trust issues that seemed insurmountable. Willowbrook, once a haven of serenity, bore witness to the unravelling of a marriage that stood at the crossroads of vulnerability and self-preservation. Shirley stood alone on the porch, her breath visible in the cold night air as she stared into the vastness of the starlit sky. The memories of her past relationships echoed through her mind like haunting whispers, leaving scars that even the warmth of the fireplace inside couldn't erase. In the flickering light, Shirley's thoughts travelled back to a time when she believed in love without reservation. Her first serious relationship with a man named Daniel had promised the world. They had been inseparable in college, sharing dreams of a future filled with love and companionship. However, as time unfolded, so did the cracks in their foundation. Daniel, charming and charismatic, had a way of making Shirley feel like the most important person in the world. Until he didn't. The betrayal came slowly, like a creeping shadow that darkened her once bright world. Late nights at the office turned into secretive text messages, and shared dreams turned into solitary pursuits. One evening, Shirley confronted Daniel about the distance growing between them. The conversation that ensued etched itself into her memory like a painful tattoo.
"Why always questioning everything, Shirley?" Daniel had snapped, his frustration palpable. "I have a life outside of us, you know."
The words stung, and Shirley felt the first twinge of doubt gnawing at her heart. She had never expected to be the one left behind, the one not prioritized. At that moment, the foundation of trust crumbled, leaving Shirley with a sense of abandonment that reverberated through her subsequent relationships. Her second serious relationship with a man named Mark followed a similar trajectory. He was different from Daniel, quieter and seemingly more reliable. Shirley believed she had learnt from the mistakes of her past, vowing never to let herself be blindsided again. Yet history repeated itself in a cruel cycle. Mark, too, became entangled in the complexities of life, his attention divided between work, friends, and seemingly everything but Shirley. The promises made in moments of intimacy evaporated into the air, leaving Shirley feeling like an afterthought. One evening, as Shirley waited for Mark to join her for a dinner she had painstakingly prepared, he called to cancel, citing an important work commitment. The pain of being overlooked, of not being enough, crashed over her like a tidal wave.
"I can't do this, Shirley," Mark had said over the phone, his voice detached. "I need someone who understands my priorities."
Shirley had felt a lump forming in her throat, the weight of betrayal settling in her chest. Her plea for understanding had fallen on deaf ears, and Mark's departure left Shirley questioning her worth. As Shirley stood on the porch of Willowbrook, the bitter echoes of her past reverberated through her innermost thoughts. The warmth of the fire inside seemed like a distant memory compared to the cold loneliness that gripped her heart. She had entered her marriage with Bruce with a fragile hope, a yearning for a love that surpassed the scars of her past. Yet the shadows of Daniel and Mark lingered, casting doubt over the sincerity of Bruce's intentions. Inside the house, Bruce paced the living room, his frustration transforming into a quiet sadness. He had known that Shirley's past relationships had left wounds, but the depth of her pain remained a mystery, locked away behind the walls she had built. As Shirley re-entered the living room, Bruce looked at her with a mixture of concern and longing.
"Shirley, please talk to me. I want to understand why you find it so hard to trust."
Shirley hesitated, her eyes avoiding his gaze. The weight of her past felt heavy on her shoulders as she tried to put into words the scars that had shaped her. "It's not you, Bruce. It's me," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been hurt before, deeply. I've been in relationships where I wasn't a priority and where promises were broken. It's hard for me to believe that this time will be different." Bruce, now seated on the couch, listened attentively, his eyes filled with a mix of compassion and frustration.
Shirley, I'm not them. I'm here, and I want to make this work. But I need you to let me in. Tell me about your past. Help me understand.
Tears welled in Shirley's eyes as she began to unravel the layers of her past, the pain and the heartbreak that had shaped her fears. Daniel was my first serious relationship. He made me feel special, like I was the centre of his world, but then he just drifted away, leaving me questioning my worth. Shirley confessed, her voice breaking with emotion. Bruce listened, his heart aching for the young woman who had been wounded by love.
And Mark?
He gently prodded. Mark was different, quieter. I thought he would be more dependable, but he too became distant and his priorities shifted away from us. It felt like I was always second best. Shirley continued, her vulnerability laid bare. Bruce sighed, reaching out to hold Shirley's hand.
I'm sorry you went through that, Shirley, but I'm not them. I chose you and I choose you every day. I want to be your priority, to build a life together. Please let me in.
Shirley looked into Bruce's eyes, searching for sincerity. The battle between her desire to trust and the fear of being hurt again raged within her. She longed for the reassurance that this time would be different, that Bruce would break the cycle of heartbreak that had defined her past. I want to believe you, Bruce, I do, Shirley whispered, her voice quivering. But it's hard. The wounds run deep, and I can't help but wonder if I should have waited, taken more time before jumping into marriage. Bruce tightened his grip on Shirley's hand, his frustration simmering beneath the surface.
Shirley, we can't change the past, but we can build a future together. Don't let the mistakes of others rob us of the love we could have.
Shirley pulled her hand away, retreating into a protective cocoon she had woven around herself. I need time to process this, Bruce. I can't promise anything right now. Silence settled in the room, a heavy curtain dividing them once again. The fire in the fireplace had dimmed, casting shadows that mirrored the unresolved tensions between the couple.
I love you, Shirley,
Bruce said, his voice tinged with desperation.
But we can't keep avoiding these conversations. We have to face our issues if we want to make this work.
Shirley nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know, Bruce. I need some time to figure things out. With those words, Shirley retreated to the bedroom, leaving Bruce alone in the dimly lit living room. The unresolved emotions hung in the air, suffocating the hope that had once flickered between them. As the night wore on, Willowbrook remained shrouded in a heavy silence. The stars overhead seemed to witness the fracture of a love that had yet to find its way through the shadows of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town of Willowbrook, Bruce found himself alone in the dimly lit living room. The weight of his thoughts pressed upon him like a heavy burden, each step echoing the distance that had grown between him and Shirley. Bruce sank into the worn-out armchair, his mind wrestling with the complexities of his marriage. He couldn't escape the nagging feeling that he was constantly under scrutiny, his every action scrutinized through the lens of Shirley's past betrayals. The foundation of trust they so desperately needed seemed to crumble beneath the weight of doubt. As he gazed into the dying embers of the fireplace, Bruce reflected on the impulsive decision that had brought them to this point. He had proposed to Shirley sooner than most, driven by a deep, intense love that had blindsided him. The whirlwind romance had swept them into marriage, and in the euphoria of newfound love, he had failed to realize the wounds that lingered within Shirley's heart. Their courtship had been a rush of emotions, fueled by passion and a shared longing for a love that defied the scars of the past. Bruce, a romantic at heart, believed in the power of love to heal all wounds. Little did he know that the wounds Shirley carried were not easily mended. The memories of their hasty engagement played in Bruce's mind like a reel of regret. He remembered the starlit night when he had dropped to one knee, the diamond ring glittering in his hand. Shirley, caught off guard by the intensity of his love, had hesitated before saying yes.
I love you, Shirley. I know it's soon, but I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?
Bruce had asked, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his emotions. Shirley had looked into his eyes, uncertainty clouding her gaze. "Bruce, I love you too, but is this moving too fast? Are we sure about this?" Bruce had brushed aside her doubts, fueled by the urgency to claim the love he believed was destined for them.
Sometimes when you just know. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Shirley."
Now, sitting alone in the quiet living room, Bruce couldn't escape the haunting reality that Shirley might have been right. Perhaps they had moved too quickly, and the cracks in their foundation had widened with each passing day. He reflected on Shirley's constant doubts, the skepticism that coloured her interactions with other women. It wasn't just about their past relationships. It was an overarching fear that any moment he could become just another name on the list of those who had betrayed her. Bruce had observed the way Shirley's eyes flickered with suspicion when he talked to a female colleague at a work event, or how she questioned the innocuous text messages that popped up on his phone. It wasn't that he resented her for it. He understood the source of her apprehension, but it weighed heavily on him, creating a strain that seemed insurmountable. The phone calls, the messages, the fleeting glances, each one became a potential trigger for Shirley's insecurities. Bruce felt as if he were walking on a tightrope, constantly teetering on the edge of her distrust. He recalled the countless conversations where Shirley had probed into his friendship, seeking reassurance that he was not drifting away. "Am I not enough for you?" she would ask, her eyes searching for validation. Bruce tried his best to offer reassurance, to convince Shirley that he had chosen her, that she was enough. The wounds of her past relationships ran deep, and no amount of love seemed to fill the void left by the scars. As he sat in the quiet living room, Bruce questioned his actions, wondering if he had failed to understand the depth of Shirley's pain. The love that had blossomed between them now felt like a fragile thread, one that threatened to unravel with each passing day. He remembered the day Shirley had confessed about Daniel and Mark, the betrayals that had left her broken. It was then that he realized the weight of her distrust wasn't solely about him. It was about the ghosts of her past that haunted her every step. Bruce had hoped that time would heal the wounds, that their love would overcome the shadows that lingered. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the fractures in their relationships deepened, creating a chasm that seemed impossible to bridge. The revelation that Shirley might regret the speed at which they had married hung heavily in the air. Bruce understood the implications, the feeling of being trapped in a commitment made too soon, the longing for a time machine to go back and reassess their choices. He couldn't blame Shirley for her doubts. He, too, had his moments of introspection. He thought about the nights when Shirley would lie awake, staring into the darkness. The unspoken words hung between them, a heavy silence that neither could break. Bruce had tried to give her space, to allow her the time she needed to heal. But as the distance between them grew, so did the silence that enveloped their home. In those moments of solitude, Bruce grappled with his insecurities, the fear that no matter how much he loved Shirley, it might never be enough to mend the wounds of her past. The constant doubt in her eyes, the hesitancy in her touch, it chipped away at the foundation of their marriage, leaving behind a fragile structure that threatened to collapse. He pondered the choices he had made, wondering if his impulsive decision to propose had set them on a course of inevitable heartbreak. That love that had once burnt brightly now flickered like a candle in the wind, its flame threatened by the uncertainty that loomed over their future. As the weekend approached, Bruce found himself determined to breathe life back into the flickering flame of his marriage. He had planned a surprise for Shirley, a candlelit dinner at the quaint Riverside Bistro, a charming restaurant nestled alongside the gently flowing Willow River. The venue, with its warm ambiance and soft glow of fairy lights, had been a favourite spot for couples seeking an intimate escape. The Riverside Bistro exuded an old-world charm. Surrounded by lush greenery, the outdoor seating area was adorned with flickering candles and delicate string lights that draped gracefully from tree to tree. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The evening sun cast a warm golden hue over the surroundings as Bruce and Shirley arrived, anticipation hanging in the air. As they settled into their private corner, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, Bruce couldn't help but admire the way Shirley's eyes sparkled in the ambient illumination. The restaurant, with its panoramic view of the river and the gentle murmur of water flowing, set the perfect stage for a heartfelt conversation. Shirley, though reserved, felt a sense of calm wash over her. The romantic setting and the effort Bruce had put into this evening seemed to melt away the walls she had built. The moments of tension and doubt that had plagued them were momentarily forgotten. Bruce cleared his throat, his eyes locking onto Shirley's as he began,
"I wanted tonight to be special, Shirley. A chance for us to reconnect, to rediscover the love that brought us together."
Shirley offered a soft smile, her guard momentarily lowered. "It's beautiful, Bruce. Thank you for this." As the evening unfolded, the two delved into a hearty conversation, the topics meandering from light-hearted memories to more profound corners of their hearts. Bruce, determined to bridge the gap that had widened between them, gently broached the subject that had become the elephant in the room.
"Shirley, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately,"
Bruce started, his gaze steady.
"I know things haven't been easy, and I understand your reservations. I want to make things right between us."
Shirley nodded, her eyes searching his for his sincerity. "Bruce, it's not that I don't want things to be right. It's just hard for me to let go of the fear."
"I get that, Shirley, I do," Bruce continued, reaching across the table to hold her hand. "But I need you to know that I'm here for the long haul. I love you, and I want to build a future with you."
A moment of silence hung between them, the soft ambiance of the riverside bistro creating a cocoon for their conversation. Shirley's eyes softened as she absorbed Bruce's words, a glimmer of hope rekindling within her.
"Shirley,"
Bruce continued, his voice earnest,
"I promised you with all my heart that I will never break your heart or betray you. I'm in this for the long run, and I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel secure and loved."
Shirley's eyes welled up with emotion, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. She felt the sincerity in Bruce's words, a warmth that thawed the icy barriers around her heart. "Bruce," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle murmur of the river. "Promise me something too." Bruce leaned in, his gaze unwavering.
"Anything, Shirley. I'll do whatever it takes."
Shirley took a deep breath, the weight of her request evident in her eyes. "Promise me that you'll never break my heart or betray me. Promise me that you'll always be true to us, and I promise you the same." Bruce nodded solemnly, his grip on Shirley's hand tightening.
"I promise, Shirley. With all my heart, I promise."
Their eyes locked in a silent agreement, the promise hanging in the air like the sweet fragrance of the blooming flowers surrounding them. The riverside bistro, with its magical setting, became the backdrop for a moment of renewal, a commitment to heal the wounds of the past and move forward, hand in hand. The night unfolded as they savoured their dinner, the candlelight flickering as a metaphor for the rekindling of their love. The intimate conversation flowed freely, weaving through the tapestry of their shared dreams and aspirations. As the evening came to a close, Bruce paid the bill, and they strolled along the riverbank, the moonlight reflecting in the gentle ripples of the water. The night, once fraught with uncertainty, now held the promise of a renewed connection.
"I love you, Shirley,"
Bruce said, his voice sincere as they stood under the moonlit sky.
"And I'm committed to making this work. We'll face whatever comes our way together."
Shirley smiled, a genuine warmth radiating from her. "I love you too, Bruce. Let's take this one step at a time and build a future filled with trust and love." The morning sun cast a gentle glow through the curtains as Bruce and Shirley started their day. The remnants of last night's tension lingered in the air, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty that neither could ignore. As Bruce stepped into the shower, the sound of water cascading drowned out any external noise. Shirley's eyes wandered to the coffee table where Bruce had left his phone. The screen illuminated with a new message notification, and a familiar name appeared. Sarah. The message read, Looking forward to our meeting this evening. Make sure to confirm before leaving work. Shirley's heart sank as she absorbed the implications of the text. The promise Bruce had made the night before, the reassurances of commitment, seemed to crumble in the face of this message. The emotions within her roared to life: doubt, betrayal, and a growing fear that the fragile trust they had attempted to rebuild might be shattered once again. A torrent of thoughts raced through Shirley's mind. Was Bruce deliberately keeping this from her? Had he lied about working overtime just to meet Sarah? The tension that had settled from the previous night now ignited like wildfire, threatening to consume the fragile threads of trust that remained. As Bruce continued his shower, Shirley battled the raging storm within her. The weight of the truth she had uncovered pressed upon her, and the decision on how to confront Bruce loomed ahead. She grappled with conflicting emotions. The desire to trust him, to believe in the love they had shared, clashed with the fear that history might repeat itself. As Bruce emerged from the bathroom, a facade of normalcy settled over Shirley. She greeted him with a smile, her eyes betraying nothing of the turmoil within. "Good morning, Bruce. How did you sleep?" Bruce returned the smile, seemingly unaware of the tempest brewing beneath the surface.
"Morning, Shirley. I slept okay. Ready for the day?"
"Absolutely," Shirley replied, her voice steady. "Any plans after work today?" Bruce hesitated for a moment, the weight of his upcoming actions evident in his expression.
"I might have to work overtime again. The project is reaching a critical phase and we need to ensure everything is in order."
Shirley's heart sank at the mention of working overtime. The realization that Bruce had lied, that he was planning to meet Sarah, intensified the emotional storm within her. Yet she maintained composure, a practiced smile masking the devastation that threatened to spill over. "That's understandable, Bruce. Work is important," Shirley replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Take your time. I'll be here." As Bruce gathered his things and headed for the door, Shirley stood in the living room, the weight of the truth settling upon her shoulders. She watched as he slipped on his coat, his movements deliberate yet seemingly oblivious to the turmoil he had stirred within her.
"See you later, Shirley,"
Bruce said, leaning in for a quick peck on her cheek. "Take care," Shirley replied, her voice strained with the effort to hide the emotions that threatened to unravel her. As Bruce left the apartment, the door clicked shut, leaving Shirley alone with the shattered fragments of trust that lay scattered around her. The silence that followed was deafening. The room, once filled with the promise of a renewed connection, now echoed the desolation of Shirley's heart. Willowbrook, with its quiet streets and the distant hum of daily life, bore witness to a woman standing at the precipice of a painful realization. As the door closed, Shirley crumbled onto the couch. The truth, laid bare by a single text message, pierced through the veneer of hope she had tried so hard to maintain. The pain of betrayal, the fear of being second best once again, gripped her heart with a suffocating intensity. Tears welled in Shirley's eyes as she replayed the events of the morning in her mind. The text from Sarah, the confirmation of an evening meeting, it all pointed to a betrayal that cut deeper than she had anticipated. The fragility of trust, already worn thin by past wounds, seemed to disintegrate with each passing moment. As Shirley grappled with the realization, the apartment silently witnessed her anguish. The unanswered questions, the hollow promises, lingered in the air like an unspoken plea for resolution. Shirley, once hopeful for a future of love and trust, found herself standing on the precipice of heartbreak once again. The morning sun cast its golden glow through the window, but within the confines of Shirley's world, a darkness loomed. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the city as Shirley, driven by ignoring uncertainty, found herself standing discreetly outside Bruce's office building. The anticipation weighed heavily on her, a knot of anxiety tightening with each passing moment. Hidden behind a pillar, she watched the clock, the seconds ticking away in rhythm with her pounding heart. As the designated work hours came to an end, Shirley's eyes never wavered from the entrance, searching for any sign of Bruce. The minutes stretched into an agonizing wait, and just when doubt threatened to overwhelm her, Bruce emerged from the building, his expression grave. Beside him walked Sarah, the colleague who had become a harbinger of distress in their relationship. Shirley's heart sank as she observed the two of them, the air heavy with an unspoken tension. Their body language spoke volumes, shoulders tense, eyes avoiding contact. A silence hung between them, pregnant with unspoken words and unresolved conflicts. As they approached the parking lot, Shirley felt a lump forming in her throat. She tried to prepare herself for the impending revelation, the truth she had sought with a mix of dread and desperation. Her husband and the source of her insecurities walking side by side, their connection shrouded in an ominous silence. Bruce and Sarah reached a car parked nearby, a vehicle that held the weight of Shirley's suspicions. The air seemed to thicken as they exchanged a few words, their expressions betraying a complexity that Shirley couldn't decipher from behind her vantage point. Finally, they got into the car, the engine humming to life. The sombre atmosphere inside the vehicle mirrored the heaviness that enveloped Shirley's heart. As they drove away, Shirley stood there, her eyes following the receding car until it disappeared around a corner. The reality of what she had witnessed hit her with an intensity that left her breathless. The betrayal, the lies, and the fragile trust were obliterated in a moment. Tears welled up in Shirley's eyes, her vision blurred by the harsh realization that her worst fears had materialized once again. Fighting back the tears threatening to spill over, Shirley staggered away from her hiding spot. The bustling city seemed to blur into a haze as she navigated the streets, each step echoing the turmoil within. She hailed a taxi, the whirring sound of the engine a dissonant backdrop to the cacophony of emotions raging inside her. As the taxi carried her through the city, Shirley's thoughts were a tempest of anguish and despair. The woman who had vowed to love and cherish her, the man who had promised to protect her heart. Both now seemed like strangers entwined in a web of deceit. The taxi arrived at their apartment building, a place that once held the promise of a shared life and a future built on trust. Shirley paid the fare mechanically, her mind consumed by the haunting images of Bruce and Sarah, their serious faces etched in her memory. She fumbled with the keys, the metal jingling in her trembling hands as she unlocked the door. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cold space. The walls seemed to close in on her, echoing the hollow ache that resonated within. Shirley stumbled into the living room, collapsing onto the couch. The weight of the truth, the realization that her marriage hung by a thread, pressed down on her like an insurmountable burden. Tears streamed down her face, unchecked and unrestrained, a silent testimony to shattered dreams and broken promises. The unanswered questions echoed in her mind. Why had Bruce lied? What was the nature of his relationship with Sarah? The shadows of doubt, once relegated to the periphery, now loomed large, casting a pall over the foundation of their marriage. The urge to confront Bruce, to demand an explanation, warred with a paralyzing fear of the truth. Shirley's mind oscillated between a desperate need for closure and the instinctive desire to shut down, to isolate herself from the pain that threatened to consume her. As she sat there, her world unravelling, the apartment transformed into a crucible of emotions. The silence was broken only by the occasional hiccup of a sob, the sound of a woman grappling with the betrayal that cut to the core of her being. The minutes turned into hours, the clock on the wall marking the passage of time in relentless ticks. Yet Shirley remained lost in the labyrinth of her thoughts. The reality of her husband's actions an indelible stain on the canvas of their shared history. Shirley rose from the couch, her steps measured yet resolute. The unanswered questions and the unspoken pain were a heavy load, but she knew that, at some point, she would have to confront the truth. The impending confrontation with Bruce lay ahead, a reckoning that would shape the course of their fractured relationship. The night was draped in an eerie stillness, broken only by the muffled sounds of the city beyond their window. Bruce stumbled through the front door, weariness etched on his face, his eyes carrying the burden of a day that seemed never ending. The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly as he closed the door behind him, casting shadows across the dimly lit living room. His wife, Shirley, sat on the couch, a silent spectator to the late-night drama unfolding before her. Her eyes were swollen, a telltale sign of silent tears in solitude. The heaviness in the room intensified as Bruce wearily dropped his keys onto the table and looked at Shirley with a forced smile.
"Hey, sweetheart," he said, his voice betraying a sense of exhaustion. "I'm sorry I'm so late. Work's been crazy lately."
Shirley met his gaze, her eyes cold and distant. The weight of her turmoil prevented her from mustering any semblance of warmth in response. She nodded without uttering a word, her silence a thick barrier between them. Bruce took a step forward, concern etching lines on his forehead.
"What's wrong, Shirley? You look like you've been crying. Is everything okay?"
A bitter smile played on Shirley's lips as she scoffed softly. "Oh, everything is just perfect," she replied, her tone laden with sarcasm. "Just like our marriage." Confusion furrowed Bruce's brow as he approached her cautiously.
"What do you mean? What happened?"
he asked, his voice tinged with genuine concern. Shirley stood up abruptly, avoiding eye contact as she walked past him towards the kitchen. "I'm going to my mother's place tomorrow," she stated curtly, her back turned to him. "And you can expect divorce papers soon." The words hung heavily in the air, the tension escalating with each passing moment. Bruce felt a knot tighten in his stomach, a sinking realization that the ground beneath him was shifting.
"What? Shirley, wait! Please!
Let's talk about this," he implored, desperation lacing his words. She turned to face him, her eyes now reflecting a mixture of pain and determination. "Talk? Bruce, we've been dancing around our issues for far too long. I can't do this anymore. I won't." His heart pounded in his chest as he took a step towards her, hands outstretched as if to bridge the emotional chasm that had suddenly opened up between them.
"Please, Shirley, tell me what happened. We can work through this. We always have."
But Shirley's resolve seemed unyielding as she shook her head, her gaze hardened. "No, Bruce, I've made up my mind. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It's over." With those final words, Shirley turned away, retreating into the sanctuary of her thoughts. Bruce stood there, his mind reeling, grappling with the sudden unravelling of the life he thought he knew. He followed her to the bedroom, desperation etched across his face.
"Shirley, please,"
he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion.
"I need to understand. Tell me what happened. We can find a way to fix it."
But Shirley remained steadfast, locking herself into their bedroom, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the closed door. Bruce sank to his knees, the weight of the impending loss crushing down on him. He pressed his forehead against the cold wood, tears streaming down his face.
"Sweetheart, don't do this. Don't leave without talking to me,"
he sobbed, his voice a broken whisper that echoed through the silent house. The night wore on, a witness to the shattered fragments of a love that had once held promises of eternity. Bruce remained outside Shirley's locked door, his pleas unanswered, the chasm between them growing wider with each passing moment. As dawn broke, a cold light filtered through the curtains, casting a pallor over the desolation within. Shirley emerged from the room, her face a mask of detachment. Without sparing Bruce a glance, she gathered her belongings and left the house, leaving behind a shattered marriage and a broken man. The door closed with a finality that echoed through the empty corridors of their shared history. Bruce remained alone, his tears now silent, his heart aching with the weight of what was lost. Shirley sat in the quiet solitude of her mother's house. As she contemplated the path ahead, Shirley decided to take control of her destiny. The decision to file for divorce weighed heavily on her heart, a necessary step to untangle the threads of a marriage that had become a tapestry of broken promises and shattered trust. The lawyer's office became a nexus of decisions that would shape the trajectory of her future. As Shirley explained the grounds for divorce, her voice steady but filled with the ache of betrayal, the lawyer informed her of the mandatory attempt at reconciliation before the legal proceedings would commence. The judge typically encourages couples to seek counselling or mediation before moving forward with the divorce, the lawyer explained, her tone compassionate. It's a chance for both parties to reconsider and, if possible, salvage the marriage. Shirley, determined to assert her right to a resolution, nodded. I understand, but I want to state adultery as the cause. I need to make it clear that trust was broken beyond repair. The lawyer, accustomed with the complexities of human relationships, nodded in understanding. Adultery can be grounds for divorce, but it might complicate the proceedings. We can proceed with your wishes, but be prepared for potential challenges. As the paperwork was initiated, Shirley felt a mix of empowerment and vulnerability. The path ahead, marked by legalities and emotional turmoil, seemed like an uncharted territory she was forced to navigate. Days later, as she awaited the judge's decision on the reconciliation attempt, Shirley found herself standing at the intersection of hope and despair. In this contemplative moment, the doorbell rang, disrupting the quietude that had enveloped the house. Shirley, her heart racing, opened the door to find Bruce standing on the threshold. His demeanour, once filled with vitality, seemed subdued, as if a shadow had cast its pallor upon him. "Bruce!" Shirley uttered, a mix of surprise and uncertainty in her voice. He nodded, the weight of his emotions evident in his gaze.
"Can we talk, Shirley?"
She hesitated for a moment before gesturing for him to enter. The air in the room seemed to thicken as they faced each other, the tension fraught with the unspoken weight of their shared history. Bruce took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Shirley's with a mixture of resignation and a quiet resolve.
"I won't beg or plead, Shirley. I can see that my love or trust mean nothing to you now."
The words hung in the air, a stark acknowledgement of the fractured bonds that once held them together. Shirley, her heart aching with the severity of his tone, searched for words that could bridge the chasm that had opened between them.
"You hurt me too, Shirley," Bruce continued, his voice carrying the echoes of a wounded soul. "Breaking the promise of sharing your feelings before jumping to conclusions. That hurt more than anything else."
Shirley, taken aback by the unexpected turn of his monologue, listened in stunned silence. Bruce's eyes, once filled with warmth, now mirrored the desolation that seemed to have consumed him.
"I won't explain anything or bother you any more," Bruce declared, his words a heavy pronouncement that hung between them. "I guessed you must have seen us. I can't change your mind, and I won't try. My love for you, my trust in us, it doesn't matter anymore."
A profound sadness etched across his face. Bruce turned to leave, the door closing behind him with a hollow finality. Shirley stood there, the weight of his words settling upon her like an unspoken truth she had yet to comprehend. The realization hit her with a force she hadn't anticipated. Bruce, once a pillar of strength in her life, had been reduced to a silhouette of desolation. The man who had entered the house, though physically present, seemed emotionally distant, his spirit seemingly extinguished by the cascading repercussions of their broken vows. As Shirley grappled with the complexity of his monologue, she couldn't shake the gnawing worry that perhaps she had acted too impulsively. The vulnerability in Bruce's eyes, and the resignation in his voice, left her questioning the cost of her decisions. The house felt like a cocoon of uncertainty. The void left by Bruce's departure echoed the lingering doubts in Shirley's heart. The judge's decision on the reconciliation attempt loomed ahead, a pivotal moment that could either seal the fate of their marriage or propel them toward an irrevocable parting. The courtroom buzzed with activity as the date for the divorce proceedings approached. Shirley, her emotions a turbulent sea of uncertainty, found herself caught in the vortex of a decision that could irreversibly alter the course of her life. As she waited, the weight of impending legalities pressed upon her, each passing moment a reminder of the choices she had made. Suddenly, amidst the bustling atmosphere, the colleague who had been at the centre of the marital strife entered the room. She approached Shirley with a determination that left no room for hesitation. "Shirley," she began, her voice steady and unyielding, "my fiancé is a doctor. I found out about Bruce's diagnosis and I wanted to help him live. I will mail the reports as proof to you." With those cryptic sentences, the colleague left as abruptly as she had arrived, leaving Shirley standing in the courtroom, her world spinning with the unexpected revelation. The words hung in the air, a seismic shift in the narrative that had unfolded until now. As Shirley processed the shock, she turned to her lawyer, a mix of confusion and disbelief etched across her face. I don't want to proceed with the divorce. I'm the one who initiated it, but I can't go through with it now. The lawyer, accustomed to the twists and turns of human relationships, nodded in understanding. It's your decision, Shirley. We can pause the proceedings until you're ready to proceed, or make a final decision. In the quiet of her home, Shirley grappled with the newfound information. The mail from the colleague contained the medical reports, a tangible manifestation of a truth she had been oblivious to. As she unfolded the pages, the words on the medical document became a stark revelation. Early-stage prostate cancer. Shirley's breath caught in her throat as the gravity of the situation sank in. The discomfort, the pain Bruce had complained about, it wasn't just a mysterious ailment, but a silent battle against a formidable adversary. The weight of her assumptions and the impulsive decisions she had made became a heavy burden she couldn't bear. The room seemed to close in around her as she stared at the reports, the lines of reality blurred by the tears that welled up in her eyes. The woman who had once vowed to stand by her husband to weather the storms together was now confronted with a truth that shattered the foundation of her certainty. A rush of memories flooded Shirley's mind. The times Bruce had expressed his discomfort, the nights he had tossed and turned in pain, each instance once a mystery, now painted a picture of a man battling a silent adversary with a courage that had gone unnoticed. As the realization settled within her, Shirley felt a profound sense of devastation. The plans for a future, the dreams of a life together, seemed like fragile illusions shattered by the unveiling of an unforeseen truth. The echoes of Bruce's pain, his silent struggles, reverberated in the silence of their home. The weight of her assumptions, the impulsiveness that had driven her to the brink of divorce, became a regret that gnawed at Shirley's soul. The woman who had stood at the precipice of severing ties now found herself teetering on the edge of an abyss of remorse. Shirley stood outside the house, the key trembling in her hand as she hesitated before unlocking the door. The air hung heavy with anticipation and the weight of unspoken truths as she stepped into what had once been the sanctuary of their shared life. The house, once a haven of shared laughter and whispered promises, now bore the scars of neglect. Disorder reigned in the living room, a reflection of the chaos that had infiltrated the fabric of their marriage. Shirley's heart sank at the sight, a poignant reminder of the fracture that had widened between them. Determined, she made her way to the bedroom where the walls echoed with the silence of their strained connection. The door, shut tight, stood as a barrier between the two souls entangled in the complexities of love and pain. Shirley, her breath catching in her throat, called out to the man she had vowed to stand by. "Bruce!" she uttered, her voice a fragile plea that carried the echoes of remorse and regret. "Please let me in. We need to talk." The bedroom remained silent, the only response being the hushed breaths that seemed to linger in the air. Undeterred, Shirley turned the doorknob, but the door was locked from inside. Bruce sat on the bed, his eyes cast downwards, the weight of the diagnosis etched across his face. The air, thick with unspoken pain, hung like a shroud around them. "Bruce!" Shirley whispered, her voice a gentle breeze that brushed against the walls of his fortress. "We need to face this together. I'm here for you." He glanced up, his eyes, once a window to the soul, now guarded by the walls he had erected. "I want to be alone now," he declared, his voice a tremor that betrayed the depth of his emotions. "The person I love the most couldn't be there for me at my worst. Just leave, Shirley." Tears welled up in Shirley's eyes as the words reverberated in the room. She could feel the distance, the chasm that had widened between them, and it tore at the fabric of her being. Yet she refused to yield to the solitude that threatened to consume them. "No, Bruce," she pleaded, her voice breaking with the weight of unspoken emotions. "Even if you don't want to talk, I won't leave your side. We can face this together. Please, let me in." Bruce, his face a canvas of pain, shook his head. "I can't, Shirley. I need to be alone right now. Just go." Shirley, undeterred by his plea, sank to the floor outside the bedroom door. The cold surface beneath her seemed inconsequential compared to the frigid divide that separated them. She called out to him, her cries a desperate plea for connection. "Bruce, please," she sobbed, her tears falling like rain that sought to wash away the barriers that held them apart. "I failed to prioritize you, to see beyond my insecurities. I'm so sorry. Please, let me be there for you now." Inside the room, Bruce remained silent, his tears mirroring the pain that enveloped them. The minutes turned into hours, the walls between them an impenetrable fortress of unspoken grief. Shirley, determined to bridge the gap, refused to leave his side. The night wore on, the darkness outside mirroring the shadows that clung to their fractured connection. She cried, not just for herself, but for the man she loved, a man grappling with a diagnosis that threatened to redefine their shared reality. The bedroom door, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, stood as a symbol of the emotional barricade that separated them. Shirley, her voice hoarse from the cries that echoed in the stillness, continued to plead for a reconciliation that seemed elusive. As the night unfolded its sombre embrace, Shirley remained outside the bedroom door, her heart entangled with the man inside. Willowbrook, with its quiet streets and starlit sky, bore witness to the poignant scene of two souls in love but hurt. The fragility of their connection laid bare in the tears that stained the fabric of their shared existence. The morning sun cast a tender glow over Willowbrook, as Shirley, determined to set things right, dialed the number that would connect her with Bruce's colleague. The events of the previous night lingered in the air, the residue of tears and unspoken pain still palpable as she navigated the uncertain terrain that lay ahead. "Hello, this is Sarah," came the voice on the other end. "Sarah, it's Shirley," she began, her voice a mixture of vulnerability and resolution. "I need to talk to you about Bruce." A pause lingered in the air before Sarah responded. "Shirley, I didn't mean to cause you any more pain. What happened?" Shirley, her heart heavy with the weight of truth, explained the events that had transpired. She recounted the discovery of Bruce's medical reports, the turmoil that had ensued, and the subsequent night of anguish outside the bedroom door. "I had no idea too, Shirley," Sarah admitted, her voice tinged with remorse. "I found the reports accidentally. They were next to some work documents of his. When I saw the diagnosis, I realized he needed support. I pleaded with him to meet my fiancé, who's a doctor, to discuss the treatment options." As Shirley listened, a complex mix of emotions swelled within her. Gratitude for Sarah's unintentional intervention, regret for the misunderstandings that had led to their fractured connection, and a growing determination to be there for Bruce in his time of need. "I want to help him, Sarah," Shirley declared, her voice resolute. "Tell me everything you know. I need to be by his side now." Sarah, recognizing the sincerity in Shirley's words, shared the details of the medical diagnosis, the treatment options, and the impending meeting with her fiancé, a doctor who could guide them through the challenges that lay ahead. Determined to be proactive, Shirley made arrangements for Bruce's treatment. She contacted specialists, scheduled appointments, and ensured that every detail was in place for his journey towards healing. The gravity of the situation propelled her into action, a sense of responsibility replacing the guilt that had haunted her. Shirley's phone rang, waiting for her lawyer's response. Her heart raced as she listened to her lawyer's voice on the other end of the line, delivering news that sent a surge of relief through her veins. "Shirley, I have good news," her lawyer said gently. "The divorce proceedings you initiated have been withdrawn, as per your request. Your husband's diagnosis of cancer has been cited as the reason, and there's no need for you to worry about it anymore." Shirley felt a weight lift off her shoulders, a mix of emotions flooding her at once, relief, guilt, and a profound sadness for her husband's illness. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, her voice thick with emotion. The line went silent, but Shirley's mind buzzed with thoughts, grateful for a second chance and determined to stand by her husband through this difficult time. As the day unfolded, Shirley found herself sitting in the waiting room of the medical facility, her eyes fixed on the door through which Bruce and the doctor would emerge. The air seemed charged with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, each passing moment a step closer to confronting the reality that awaited them. When the door finally opened, Bruce emerged, his face a canvas of emotions that ranged from fear to resignation. The doctor, a figure of reassurance, followed behind him, offering a nod of acknowledgement to Shirley.
"Shirley, meet Dr. Reynolds,"
Bruce introduced, his voice carrying a weight that mirrored the severity of the circumstances. Dr. Reynolds extended a hand, his demeanour professional yet compassionate.
"I've discussed the treatment options with Bruce. It's a challenging road ahead, but with the right approach we can navigate through it."
Shirley, her resolve unyielding, nodded in acknowledgement. "Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. We're ready to face this together." In the days that followed, Shirley stood by Bruce's side as he grappled with the reality of his diagnosis. The medical appointments and the discussions about treatment plans became a shared journey through the labyrinth of uncertainty. Despite the challenges, Shirley's presence served as a pillar of strength for Bruce. The day of the surgery arrived, a pivotal moment that would determine the trajectory of their shared future. Shirley, her heart heavy with the weight of the unknown, stood outside the operating room as Bruce was wheeled in. The sterile surroundings and the hushed conversations of medical staff heightened the sense of vulnerability that hung in the air. As the hours passed, Shirley clung to the hope that the surgery would bring healing. Dr. Reynolds emerged, his expression conveying a mix of fatigue and relief.
"The surgery went well. We were able to address the issues in its early stages, and Bruce is in recovery now."
A wave of relief washed over Shirley, the weight of uncertainty lifting from her shoulders. The knowledge that they had overcome a significant hurdle brought a glimmer of optimism to the otherwise sombre landscape of their journey. In the recovery room, Bruce lay in a bed, his eyes reflecting a complex tapestry of emotions. Shirley approached him, her gaze filled with a tenderness that spoke volumes of the love she had rediscovered in the face of adversity. The passage of time seemed to blur into an indistinct haze as Shirley devoted herself to Bruce's recovery after returning to their house. Days turned into weeks, each marked by the routine of medication schedules, doctor's appointments, and the quiet vigilance of a caretaker consumed by the weight of unspoken emotions. As she tended to Bruce's needs, Shirley found herself immersed in a role that felt both foreign and familiar. For the first time in their shared history, it was she who assumed the mantle of caregiver, the roles reversed in the wake of Bruce's illness. The transition, though wrought with uncertainty, brought with it a sense of purpose that resonated within her. In the quiet hours of the morning, Shirley would prepare Bruce's medication, the clinking of pill bottles a symphony of hope amidst the silent landscape of their shared existence. She would sit by his side, a silent sentinel of care, as he ingested the pills that promised healing. "Here, Bruce," she would say softly, offering him the glass of water that served as a conduit for his medication. "Take your time." Bruce, his demeanour distant and reserved, would nod in acknowledgement before swallowing the pills with a quiet resignation that spoke volumes of the emotional turbulence that simmered beneath the surface. The air between them, once filled with the warmth of shared laughter, now seemed weighed down by the unspoken truths that lingered in the spaces between their words. Throughout the day, Shirley would attend to Bruce's needs with diligence born out of love and devotion. She would prepare meals that catered to his dietary restrictions, the aroma of home-cooked food a nostalgic reminder of happier times. She would help him navigate the challenges of daily life, offering a steady hand and a reassuring presence in moments of uncertainty.
"Thank you, Shirley,"
Bruce would say, his voice tinged with a quiet gratitude that pierced through the veneer of his stoicism.
"I appreciate everything you're doing for me."
Shirley, her heart swelling with a sense of purpose, would offer him a gentle smile in return, the weight of their shared history palpable in the unspoken understanding that bound them together. Yet, despite her best efforts, she couldn't shake the feeling of disconnection that seemed to envelop them like a shroud. As the days turned into weeks, Bruce remained distant and reserved, his interactions with Shirley marked by a curtness that spoke volumes of the emotional barriers he had erected. The conversations that once flowed effortlessly between them now seemed stilted and forced. The silence between their words a reminder of the chasm that had widened between their hearts. "Bruce, is there anything you need?" Shirley would ask, her voice a tentative whisper that sought to breach the walls of his silence.
"I'm fine, Shirley,"
he would reply, his tone clipped and distant.
"I don't need anything."
The exchange would hang in the air like an unspoken truth, the weight of Bruce's words a testament to the emotional distance that had grown between them. Shirley, her heart heavy with the weight of unspoken emotions, would retreat into the solitude of her thoughts, grappling with the complexities of their shared reality. In the quiet moments of the night, as Shirley lay in bed beside Bruce, the distance between them seemed to stretch into infinity. She would reach out tentatively, her fingers grazing his arm in a silent plea for connection, only to be met with the coldness of his withdrawal. "Bruce!" she would whisper, her voice a fragile echo in the darkness. "I'm here for you. Please let me in." He would turn away, his silence a barrier that seemed insurmountable in the quiet hours of the night. The tears that welled up in Shirley's eyes would go unnoticed in the shadows that enveloped them. The ache of unspoken longing, a palpable presence in the stillness of their shared solitude. As the days stretched into a month of Bruce's recovery, Shirley found herself consumed by a sense of longing for the connection they once shared. The role of caregiver, though undertaken with a sense of purpose, seemed to magnify the emotional distance that had grown between them, leaving her grappling with the echoes of a love that seemed to slip through her fingers like grains of sand. Willowbrook, with its quiet streets and starlit sky, bore witness to the poignant scene of two souls entangled in the complexities of love and loss, the fragile threads of their connection stretched thin by the weight of unspoken emotions. The air in the room hung heavy with the weight of unspoken words, as Shirley stood before Bruce, her heart pounding with the gravity of the decision she had made. The silence between them seemed to stretch into eternity, each passing moment a testament to the emotional turmoil that churned within her. "Bruce," Shirley began, her voice a fragile whisper that seemed to dissipate into the emptiness of the room. I've decided to leave." The words hung in the air, a palpable echo of the turmoil that had consumed her in the wake of Bruce's recovery. She watched as his expression shifted, a flicker of surprise mingling with the resignation that seemed to settle upon his features like a shroud. He remained silent, his eyes fixed on her with a depth that betrayed the emotions swirling beneath the surface. Shirley, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision, awaited his response, with a sense of apprehension that seemed to suffuse the room. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Bruce spoke, his voice tinged with a rawness that cut through the silence like a knife. "You're leaving?" Shirley nodded, her throat constricted by the emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. I feel like you don't want me here anymore. I don't want to cause any more trouble for you." The words hung between them like a barrier, the silence that followed a testament to the depths of their shared pain. Shirley waited, her heart pounding in her chest for Bruce's response, a response that would determine the course of their shared future. Bruce remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor as if grappling with the weight of her words. The air between them seemed charged with a sense of finality, each passing moment a reminder of the fragility of their connection. And then, as if unable to contain the emotions that simmered within him, Bruce spoke, his voice a raw whisper that seemed to pierce the silence like a blade. "You think I don't want you here? You think I don't love you?" Shirley's breath caught in her throat at the intensity of his words, the rawness of his emotions echoing in the stillness of the room. She met his gaze, her eyes brimming with tears that threatened to spill over at any moment. I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought it would be easier for both of us if I left. Bruce shook his head, his expression a mixture of hurt and anger that seemed to blend in a tumultuous whirlwind of emotions.
Easier? Do you think it was easy for me when I found out about the reports? When I wanted to share it with you, but you closed off the door?
His words struck Shirley like a lightning bolt, the realization of his pain a sharp pang in her chest. She felt the weight of her actions, the consequences of her decision to shut him out in his time of need, bearing down upon her with a crushing force. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice choked with tears. I didn't know you were in pain. Bruce's eyes bore into hers, a torrent of emotions swirling within their depths.
I begged, Shirley. I cried. I begged you to let me in, but you didn't. I felt so alone.
The admission hung in the air between them, a poignant reminder of the depths of their shared pain. Shirley felt a lump form in her throat as she grappled with the weight of his words, the realization of the hurt she had caused him settling upon her like a heavy burden. I'm so sorry, Bruce, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the tumult of emotions that raged within her. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know. Bruce reached out tentatively, his hand brushing against hers in a gesture of tentative reassurance.
No amount of hurt could ever make me stop loving you, Shirley, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I was angry. I was upset, but underneath it all, my love for you never wavered.
Shirley felt a wave of emotion wash over her at his words, the floodgates of her heart opening to the rawness of their shared truth. She reached out, her hand trembling as it sought his, their fingers intertwining in a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had weathered the storms of their shared journey. This incident has taught me something, Bruce, she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion. It's taught me that a true relationship has no doors, that we need to be open and honest with one another, even when it's difficult. Bruce nodded, his eyes reflecting the depth of his understanding.
I agree, Shirley. We need to be open with each other, to share our fears and our insecurities. That's what love is all about.
And in that moment, as their hands clasped together in a silent vow of renewed commitment, Shirley felt a sense of hope bloom within her, a hope that their shared journey, though fraught with challenges and obstacles, would ultimately lead them back to each other. Willowbrook, with its quiet streets and starlit sky, bore witness to the poignant scene of two hearts entwined in the dance of love and forgiveness, the echoes of their shared truth reverberating in the stillness of the night. 2 months had passed since the night that had threatened to tear Bruce and Shirley apart. In the intervening time, a delicate truce had settled over their once turbulent relationship, like the gentle calm after a storm. They had found a tentative rhythm, learning to navigate the rocky terrain of their emotions with newfound openness and honesty. One evening, as they sat together in the warmth of their living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm embrace around them, Shirley spoke up, her voice tinged with a newfound vulnerability. You know, she began, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fireplace, I've been thinking a lot about what happened that night. Bruce turned to look at her, his expression one of genuine interest.
Yeah? What have you been thinking?
He asked, his tone gentle and encouraging. Shirley took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before continuing. I realised that I was so caught up in my own pain and anger that I couldn't see past it, she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. I shut you out without giving you a chance to understand what I was feeling. Bruce reached out, gently taking her hand in his own, a silent gesture of understanding and support.
It's okay, sweetheart, he said softly. We both made mistakes that night, but what matters is that we're here now, trying to move forward together.
A smile tugged at the corners of Shirley's lips as she squeezed his hand. Yeah, you're right, she replied, a sense of relief washing over her. I'm just grateful that we're finally talking about it. Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing on the phone, a sudden intrusion on the quiet intimacy they had created. Bruce glanced to the caller ID before answering, his brow furrowed in confusion.
"Hello?"
he greeted, his tone wary. Shirley watched him closely, a sense of curiosity piquing her interest. "Who is it?" she whispered, her curiosity getting the better of her. Bruce held up a hand, signalling for her to wait as he listened intently to the voice on the other end of the line. A few moments later he hung up the phone, a bemused smile playing on his lips.
"That was your mum,"
he announced, a hint of amusement in his voice.
"She's inviting us for dinner next weekend."
Shirley's eyes widened in surprise, a mixture of emotions swirling within her. "My mum!" she echoed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "But she's never invited us over before." Bruce nodded, a grin spreading across his face.
"I guess she's finally coming around," he said, his tone light. "Looks like we'll have to bring a bottle of wine to celebrate."
The aroma of roasted chicken filled the cosy dining room as Shirley, Bruce, and Shirley's mother, Mrs. Davis, sat around the table. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the tension that had once plagued their interactions. Tonight, however, the air was infused with a sense of ease, a testament to the healing that had taken root within their shared space. Mrs. Davis, her eyes twinkling with affection, observed the couple seated before her. She had watched them navigate the trials and tribulations of their relationship with a sense of maternal concern, her heart aching for the struggles they had endured. Tonight, however, she sensed a shift, a subtle transformation that spoke volumes of the growth they had undergone. "You two seem different tonight," Mrs. Davis remarked, her voice gentle yet perceptive. "There's a sense of peace about you." Shirley exchanged a knowing glance with Bruce, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "We've been working on things," she admitted, her voice tinged with pride. "It hasn't been easy, but we're getting there." Mrs. Davis nodded, her eyes softening with understanding. "I'm glad to hear that. Relationships take work, but the payoff is worth it." Bruce, his gaze fixed on Shirley with a sense of reverence, reached out to squeeze her hand in a silent gesture of solidarity.
"Shirley's been amazing," he confessed, his voice filled with admiration. "She's been opening up more, and I couldn't be prouder of her."
Shirley felt a rush of warmth flood her cheeks at Bruce's words, the validation of her efforts a balm to her soul. "And Bruce has been incredible too," she added, her voice tinged with affection. "He respects my introverted nature and gives me space when I need it instead of trying to pressure me." Mrs. Davis smiled, her heart swelling with pride at the sight of her daughter and son-in-law finding their way back to each other. "That's beautiful," she remarked, her voice filled with admiration. "Mutual respect is the foundation of a strong relationship." The conversation flowed effortlessly as they savoured the meal before them, each bite a celebration of the bonds that had been forged through hardship and perseverance. Mrs. Davis, her gaze drifting between Shirley and Bruce, couldn't help but feel a sense of hope stir within her, a hope for a future filled with love, understanding and mutual respect. As they cleared the table and settled into the comfort of the living room, Mrs. Davis found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. She had watched Shirley and Bruce weather the storms of doubt and uncertainty, their love tested by the trials of life, yet in the face of adversity they had emerged stronger, their bond forged in the fires of adversity. "You know," Mrs. Davis began, her voice soft yet filled with conviction, "I've always believed that true love isn't about grand gestures or extravagant displays. It's about the little things. The quiet moments of understanding, the shared laughter, the mutual respect for one another's differences." Shirley and Bruce exchanged a knowing glance, their hearts entwined in the shared truth of Mrs. Davis's words. They had come to understand that their relationship was not defined by the obstacles they faced, but by the strength of their commitment to one another.
"We've learnt a lot along the way," Bruce admitted, his voice filled with gratitude. "And we still have a lot to learn. But as long as we have each other, I know we'll be okay."
Shirley smiled, her heart overflowing with love for the man beside her. "I couldn't agree more," she confessed, her voice filled with emotion. "Our relationship may not be perfect, but it's ours, and that's all that matters." Mrs. Davis watched the couple before her, her heart swelling with pride at the sight of the love that bound them together. As they sat in the warmth of the living room, surrounded by the echoes of shared laughter and whispered promises, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment, a moment filled with hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love. As the days passed, Shirley and Bruce found themselves growing even closer, their bond strengthened by the trials they faced together. Through Bruce's illness, they discovered a deeper level of love and commitment, each moment cherished as they navigated through the uncertainties of life hand in hand.
"I never knew how much I meant to you until now, Shirley,"
Bruce said, his voice filled with gratitude as he looked into her eyes. "And I never realised how strong we could be together," Shirley replied, squeezing his hand gently. Their home was filled with laughter and love, a testament to the resilience of their relationship. With equal efforts from both sides, they faced each day with courage and optimism, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could overcome any obstacle that came their way. Together, they embraced the future with open hearts, grateful for the journey that had brought them even closer together.